outcome with launching a new idea in the world, and brings a return of investment sooner rather than later. But before we go into details, I will also take the opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Liliana Pavel. I'm a delivery lead in Yonder. I've been working for this organization for more than 3 years. I'm managing the delivery of software development projects in various verticals: healthcare, local government, transit, and many others. I like to believe that I'm a traveler. I'm passionate about photography and discovering new foods during my travels. I'm based in Iași, in Romania. This is a picture of my cat. His name is Bjorn. He usually crosses the camera during my meetings, and you would normally see him in this webinar, but not today, because I'm actually hosting this presentation from our office in Iași, and this is a picture that I took a couple of months ago this autumn with a view from the window of our office. It's a really nice view, and I wanted to share it with you today before we start our conversation. Instead of an agenda, this is a reminder of how we presented the webinar. What I'm aiming for today is to explain how we help our customers, which are software product companies, to take an idea from the roadmap and transform it into an actual product in such a way that it's safe, and that you see results within a timeline that allows you to show a workable product to your end customer, and allows you also to capture back some of the value, so seeing the return of investment sooner rather than later. And it all starts with managing the risks. Launching a new idea in the market comes with a lot of unknowns to manage. We're challenged to think big in terms of ideas and how we can innovate, how we can improve, basically staying relevant in the market. However, when you think big, sometimes this gets us lingering for too long because of reluctance in the organization, or lack of resources to take the idea out of the shelf, or because of lack of courage. Other times you start working on the idea, but it becomes too difficult to manage. It's a giant project that is not bringing the targeted return of investment fast enough, and it gets stakeholders impatient. But there's also a way of managing the risk wisely, and you start small. And this is the best practice that we have learned throughout the years. At Yonder, as software development partners, we've been exposed to a significant number of new developments or products launched in the market. We've seen how a new product becomes a success, or a moderate success, or it can even become a failure. And it has a lot to do with the process of managing such a new initiative. And this is what I'm going to focus on during this presentation. And this is the process of turning a new idea to reality. We've perfected it in 3 steps, and we'll go into details on the next slides, but there are some overarching comments on each of the phases. So initiate, convince and sell, and build and deliver. These are the 3 steps of this process. In the initiate phase, this is when you stay close to your customers and you really spend time to understand the need that he has and the problem that you want to fix in the market. And this will also afterwards give you insights on how to model your own investment. The second phase is convincing and selling, and this is the part when you leverage the relationship that you have with your early adopters, and you find those customers that are willing to embark with you in the journey of developing this new feature and to co-fund it. So these are the customers that are already willing to pay for the new functionality, and that will help with the commercial viability of your new initiative. Also, this is when you give them a taste of the future, And I'll talk a lot about how we do these co-creation experiments in the form of a hackathon. And then there's build and deliver. This is the phase when you start with building the minimum viable product. So this is the affordable solution where you can test the idea and the adoption. So monitoring comes into place. You can perfect the idea, create the opportunities for future iterations. So generating cash flow and early return of investment before going with an enhanced full product to the market. And what is really interesting here is that traditionally, the entry point for your development team, and it really doesn't matter if it's an in-house team or you work with an external partner, it's the third phase, the build and deliver. However, our experience showed that development teams would ideally be involved in this process, starting with the orientation, so from the initiation phase, and there is actual hands-on work that they can already contribute with, so the idea becomes a success. And I'll explain on the next slides how can your development teams contribute to the business case from the initiates. And our long-term customers already do this together with us. They involve us from the first phases of building their business cases. But there are also cases when we get involved from build and deliver. There is more unknown and more challenges that we usually face. But when they return with new projects, they already approach us from initiate. So our customers discover the benefit of involving the development teams from the beginning. And as I said, I'll spend a bit of time on each of the steps and come with some best practices that we apply in this process of managing new initiatives. It starts with orientation in the market, and this is where you understand the need, you do a market assessment, you do the competitive analysis, you understand the buying motive for the users. It's basically the research of the viability of the product. This is also the phase when you do a technical evaluation, both from functional and technology perspective. Product mind map and product definition are processes that we apply at the level of requirements, while at the technical level, you can already start working on the architecture vision and the technical solution. And you can also already develop your UI UX concept, which will come in as being extremely helpful when you sell the idea to your early adopters who will also co-fund the project. When it comes to modeling your investment, this is the moment when you assess your financials and your pricing strategy. And we always involve our development teams in doing estimates of the effort of development, basically correlating these estimations with your financials and with your budget. You can validate what is the scope of the new idea. And how much functionality can you include in your initial minimum viable product scope. So it's also a profitable business case for your organization. And of course, decide how the pricing strategy should look like. There are many cases, we've seen many cases when you take ideas from your idea funnel, but you still work with old assumptions. So for example, a couple of years back, someone worked on a new feature description, potentially gave some thought about a technical solution or some effort needed for implementation, validated. That's the rule that we apply. Make sure that it's still in line with the overall solution, with the market trends. And afterwards, you can go into project planning and managing your risks. And here's the first lesson that we learned, and some tips and tricks for you to apply when building business cases for the new initiatives that you want to launch. It might seem like a high effort to already put now on paper all the requirements, or already give effort for drafting a technical solution or investing time in your UI UX concept. But all diligent preparations that are done at this stage will save costs down the line and will increase development speed and in the end improve your time to market. We've been in many situations when we worked on new developments where there was already a customer commitment that was given, so the end user was expecting to receive the product at a certain date before any developer or technical expert could even look at the scope and do a high-level assessment of the solution and the effort. And if the initial assumptions were bad, you need to go back to the customer and start renegotiating your timeline and your scope, putting you in a vulnerable spot. So, as I said, as software development partners, we are now involved with many of our customers in preparing the new ideas from phase one and contributing with analysis of requirements, of the technical limitations, and in estimating the effort and the cost. So diligent preparation will confirm or correct your assumptions, and you should do this before it becomes expensive. Don't assume that the idea will work or that it will be profitable or well received in the market if you did not really assess it, or you did not, or don't assume that the technical solution is low effort. Clarify all these with your technical experts before jumping into building your case. This is why one of the prerequisites that we promote from the first phases of an initiative, and that will avoid using assumptions further down the line, is already working on your UI concept. It's quite straightforward when you create anything. It's common practice that you will start with a draft, with a sketch. And if you've worked previously on designing a product, for sure you've already heard about wireframe, mockup, or prototype. Each one serves a very different purpose, either creating a blueprint or a scheme of your application, or actually focusing on the functionality of the new product. But ultimately, though they are all different ways to draft your final product, they will serve you in the second phase, which is the convince and sell. And this takes me to this second part of the process that we apply in managing new ideas and turning them into software solutions. Creating the new reality, showing the future, and focusing on your proof of concept. This is how you start leveraging your early adopters. This is when you finalize your product requirements. The early adopters, as I mentioned, they will influence your decision, but here's a possible pitfall that we've seen. Make sure that they don't take control from you and that they don't make the solution highly customized to their personal need. You should be in control of your scope. You should be able to negotiate it and to create a solution that applies to your whole target group. Also think about how you model your financials and stay in the budget. And if changes happen in terms of what the customers are expecting, review the estimates and negotiate the scope. This is also when co-creation and experiments on the idea come into the story. And we are firm believers that you should create space for your development teams to experiment, to become creative, and envision the future. And of course, use the results to get user feedback and improve your product. These are safe to fail experiments. You might even come up with a better technical solution, a better user flow, or you might reach to the conclusion that you need to kill the initiative fast because it's not working. In Yonder, and I really want to focus a bit on this, we allocate quite a lot of effort to organize these co-creation sessions. We call them hackathons usually. These are 2 to 3 days events where we help software product companies to create proof of concepts for their new products or to introduce innovation. Um, as I mentioned, these topics should have a certain degree of innovation that is part of the topic. I will not insist on this, but the following webinar of this series with my colleague Irina focuses on this aspect, how to introduce innovation in your product. This event, the hackathon, it's focusing on coding and exploring the idea. And even though it sounds like a technical event, you build something, you test some technical assumptions. It's actually an event that is oriented towards the business side of the project, because it facilitates actions and decisions and gives arguments for moving forward or not with a certain project or approach. We usually build a team for each of the hackathons. For us as development partners, it's critical to have someone with in-depth domain knowledge involved in the event. So it's usually a product owner or a subject matter expert or a product champion from the company that wants to test an idea. We are technology experts many times. We also have the domain knowledge inside that market or vertical, but not at the same level as product persons that research the market for the specific initiative. So this is why we want the product owner to team up with the developers, with the UI designer or the architect to test the assumptions that are in scope for the hackathon. And this process involves brainstorming and tryouts. You will get an answer for your strategic question. It's either about launching a new product, trying to penetrate a new market, trying to introduce a new technology in your product. And it's an effective way to test the idea within 2-3 days. And you get diverse access to competence and the possibility to brainstorm on the best way to serve your end customer and your project. The approach that we have for preparing these events is quite straightforward. You do some preparation to identify the idea that you want to test. You build a team with both the technical and the functional knowledge. You do some effort to gather the data. You need your team to understand the functional and technical details of the idea that they want to test. And to agree upon the scope of the hackathon. What do you want to test? Is it a new architecture, a new technical solution, or maybe even build a key user flow that afterwards you will use to convince your potential customers that this is a solution that will work for them? Then we experiment in the 4th phase and we do a demo at the end of the event. Sometimes this demo happens inside the team of the hackathon. Otherwise, other times we've done it with a full audience that included research and development departments from our customers or even users. So end users that were able to see the proof of concept or the prototype that we've created. And it's also important to create a pipeline for this kind of event. As I said, we are firm believers in creating space for experimenting. For example, last year we had 2 days dedicated to such an event where 5 ideas were tested by a team of 18 developers, testers, and so forth. Only a month after, we traveled to the Netherlands with one of our development teams because one of our customers was in need of creating a proof of concept for a business case, and they wanted to test a new technical solution and also to build one of the workflows to convince more users to join the business case. So we're quite flexible with the framework. We can do in-house events or on-demand online events. It doesn't matter as long as you feed this desire of experimenting and you create a safe space for it. And this leads me to the third part of the process, the phase when you actually build the solution. As I said, best practice is to start with the affordable solution, the MVP that will test the market. It still needs to be a product that solves a problem for the user and which will be further enhanced based on the market response. We usually work using the agile methodology, but the pitfall that we've seen most often is scope creep. Sometimes this is driven by the end customer demands. Other time it's the enthusiasm of the product people that want to build more and add more functionality. This is why you need to monitor your deliverables, your investment, and stay in the business case you've built. So be agile, but stay true to your plan. Not freezing the requirements or the backlog will lead to increased effort, and your time to market will be affected. And what we also learned is that what you do after the launch is critical for success. We strongly recommend to monitor the product and analyze the user behavior before you go into growth or enhancing your product. You should be monitoring the customer adoption rate, which are the flows frequently used, because usually the Pareto 80 to 20% rule applies. If the users don't actually use the application, the potential of further enhancing the product is no longer there. And I actually remember a very specific case when we developed with one of our customers from the healthcare vertical our first initiative together. And at the end of development cycle, we did not have this good practice into place of measuring and monitoring everything. And we discovered too late that customers were not actually using the module. Since that time, it was in 2017 or 2018, we launched 3 new initiatives with this customer. And every time we plan and we consider in the roadmap and in the estimations, effort for logging and monitoring, from performance-related metrics to how the user actually uses the application metrics. And it's a partnership because we give the data, but it's the product owner or the subject matter expert that gives the meaning and takes action with the users. So please make sure that you support your customer's organization in managing the change for the people that will actually use the application. And there's things that you can do ahead by understanding their ways of working and preparing, training them for change, but also actions that you can take after the launch by monitoring how they use the solution. This being said, these are the practices that I wanted to share with you today. I would say that this is quite a complex and big topic to talk about, so we barely scratched the surface. I would be happy to continue the conversation, maybe in future meetings or future sessions. And of course, we have some time dedicated for questions and answers. So I will pause for a bit to see if there are any questions. Okay, so I see one question that we have from Andrea. When communicating the timeline of the MVP, you have guidelines that you follow based on other projects, or each product project needs a different timeline. Definitely, every time we tackle a new initiative, we have a new timeline that is agreed with the customers, because you would consider the requirements, the level of effort that are needed to implement those specifications, but also time needed to implement the technical solution and so forth. But there are also cases when there are constraints on the table. So for example, the end user might be needing the product at a certain date or a certain moment. And then you might be working around the need that they have and model the scope in such a way that you address their need. Thank you for the question, Andrea. A follow-up question from Andrea. What would you say is the most important lesson learned when developing an MVP? I would say that preparation is the key. So before you actually go into developing an MVP, make sure that you have a clear scope defined, that you have an architecture and a technical solution agreed with your partners, and then stay on top of your scope that was defined for the minimum viable product. So avoid scope creeping. Oliver, how do you manage scope creep? Any particular way to determine MVP versus nice to have? Well, this is actually something that we do from the first phase, so from the initiation, looking with the product champion and with the end user at the full list of requirements that they want to have implemented, and to already categorize them into must-have and nice-to-have, and of course correlate the functionalities with the effort needed to develop and with the budget, so with the financial part. So you have a winning case scenario for your new initiative. And then, of course, there's a degree of flexibility, especially when you're working agile. But whatever comes in as a priority in the MVP scope will need to deprioritize something else. So we try to be in touch with the customer and make them understand that if they want us to stay on time, scope should be followed as we agreed initially. Hope this clarifies the question, Oliver. Katalin, hackathons are only internal, or is it possible for the customers to get involved in? We've had both scenarios. So yes, most of the times it's an internal event where we as a software services company and our customer as a software product company work together on the proof of concept. But we've also had cases where the end user joined us to better explain the use case, that the problem that they want to solve. And also to attend the demo. And these are usually really nice sessions because they are excited about the results that we have. Thank you for the question, Katalin. We have one more question from Martin. What product discovery methods do you use in the first phase to find an interesting and promising topic area for MVP and BDM activities? There are all kinds of workshops that we use together with our customers to understand the requirements. For example, persona workshops that we might be organizing to better understand the functional needs of the end customers. There's a whole type of expertise that we apply here from the requirements analysis perspective, and I can actually maybe go into detail after this session. I can contact you and maybe we can spend more time to discuss practices from the requirements analysis perspective. There's one more anonymous question. You have mentioned the yearly event for hackathons. How many of the ideas get green light for implementation after the event? That's a good question. I don't think we have statistics about this, but I can give some references from last year. So from the 5 ideas that we tested, 6 ideas actually, 2 are being implemented this year. We are either already working on the project or we are due to start in the second quarter of the year. So it's really depending on the business case evolution, and also on the type of the hackathon, because sometimes you organize an event just for exploring a new technology or a new technical solution. Other times it's hackathons that it's really dedicated to testing or creating a proof of concept for a business case that's on the roll. And those ones have a big chance of being fulfilled in the end. Maybe it's also interesting to mention that a lot of our projects with and the new functionalities with old customers start with the hackathon. I would say that probably 70% of them start with the proof of concept. Okay, so I don't see any other new questions, but I will refresh the panel to make sure that I didn't miss any. Thank you very much for the questions that you have addressed. And as I mentioned, I would be happy to continue the conversation and do a follow-up on these. So maybe we'll take the time to do it after this session. Okay. So I think this concludes the presentation. If there are no other questions, many thanks for joining. I appreciate your presence here, and I hope that you will also join my colleague Irina, who will start in 20 minutes her presentation about approaching innovation and new technical solutions in products that are already established. Thank you very much and wishing you a good evening.